next participant is Aditi L. Naik from Father Agnel High Secondary. Her topic is a national language for India.
Vanakkam, pranam, namaskar, respected principal, judge, and my dear friends. I, Aditi Naik from Father Agnel High Secondary School, Bilal, would like to speak on the topic, a national language for India. The other day, there was a talk on national television about making English or Hindi a national language. And my circle of friends, a Malayali got up and said, Malayalam Rashtra Bhasha Avanam. A Kannadika friend said, Kannada nama Rashtra Bhasha agabeku. My Maharashtrian friend said, Marathi Rashtra Bhasha honaras pahije. The Gujarati friend said, Gujarati आपली राष्ट्रभाषा हवा उचल. हाव गिरावता कोंकणी आमची मायभास जावंक जाय आमची राष्ट्रभास. Well, as you are aware, that India is one of the few countries with no national language. India boasts of nearly 1,600 languages and officially recognizes 22 as national language. Language is a vehicle of thought and means of communication. Well, the debate rages on which should be our national language. If you consider the universality of the language, then English wins hands down. But is India really ready to make a foreign language our Rashtra Bhasha? I think Kalidas and Premchand will join into their graves. Supporters of Hindi will vouch for its popularity and vehicle of Bollywood. I think regional writers like Shonai Goibab will rise up from the dead to oppose them. Bengali is considered as the sweetest language spoken by the people. Therefore, there must be abundance to secure a place for their language as national language. If you consider the fact that nearly half the population is illiterate, so the national language should be easy to learn. Supporters of Konkani will vouch for it because one can see and be amazed at the fluency with which the non-Goans speak Konkani. Let us consider some events over the years. Anti-English riots in Rajasthan, Uttar Pradesh and Bihar have left deep scars on the Indian psyche. So is the case with the anti-Hindi riots in South India, where the railway board signboards were defaced and property worth crores were destroyed. Closer home and bordering states, running feud between Kannada and Marathi-speaking population in Belgaum will spill over to Goa. Having a national language will create bridges in between regions, states and culture. My humble request to you is that let's not make any language a national language. Let's enjoy and celebrate the diversity of language. Just as the rainbow lies in the amalgamation of colors, the beauty of India lies in diversity of language. I don't want to lose my friends on the language basis. So save India, save my friendship. Thank you.
Well, Aditi, it was very nice where you spoke about India being a diverse country with different languages. Now I call upon Macwellen from same Father Agnel High Secondary Bilal. His topic for this talk will be freedom of expression and speech.
Good morning, respected judge, and all my dear ladies and gentlemen. The cage bird sings with a tearful will on the distant hill, looking for freedom. Well, if you are guessing, it's a stanza from the poem Cage Bird by Maya Angelou, set to tune by me. Had there been restriction on freedom of speech and expression, then this wouldn't have been possible. Lest our flag too would be like that of a caged bird. Hence, freedom of speech and expression is important to democracy as oxygen to human beings. It is enshrined in the Indian Constitution, Article 19(1)(a), that all the citizens citizens have the right to freedom of speech and expression, whereby they can express their feelings by writing, printing, or by speech. Since times immemorial, this freedom is seen as essential for the smooth functioning of democratic countries. This basic right is mocked and stifled by many people. For instance, the PK movie by Rajkumar Hirani faced opposition and was proposed to be banned on religious grounds. However, the Supreme Court rejected the plea to ban the movie and safeguarded the freedom of speech and expression. So now the question arises, how free are we to express ourselves and speak out our hearts? This reminds me of an incident that created an uproar in Maharashtra in 2012. A young girl, Sahin Dada, was arrested for posting comments on the social networking site on account of Bal Thakre's death. So the next time a person thinks of expressing his views, he or she becomes scared because the government works as such. If anything, and how can we say that India is a haven for people to express their feelings? In Shobha Day faced protests on account of a tweet against the Maharashtrian government. And here in Goa, how can the Ravindra Bhavan, the South Goa's drama theatre hall, demand an undertaking from the theatrists promising not to speak on politicians and government officials? Hence, let us not be puppets dancing to the tunes of the government or influential people. Rather, let us be like birds flying in the sky and singing to our heart content. I would like to end this by quoting what George Washington said, quote unquote, "If freedom of speech and expression was taken away, then dumb and silent we may be led like sheep to the slaughter." Thank you.
Thank you, McWellen. I think what disturbed everybody about Bal Thakre's death more than anything was the fact that the Swedish House Mafia concert was cancelled because of his death in Bombay, and people were more upset about that than anything else. Next participant is Karen Pereira from MES High Secondary. Her topic is reservations in educational sectors.
A very good morning to one and all present here. My name is Karen Pereira and I am from MES Secondary, High Secondary School. Today, I'm here to talk about the topic reservation in educational institutions. The term reservation has been doing its rounds in the Indian media, and today the government has decided to implement 27% quota for the ST, SCs and other backward classes in India for higher studies. After India achieved independence, some sections of our society led a miserable life. Most of them were exploited, and the false beliefs further aggravated the problem. So, the government took the decision to reserve some seats for these students, and so that both the societies could progress together. But now, what do you all see? It is totally different. The other sections showed more improvement, but the middle class just remained the same. And this of reserving 27% quota for the ST, SCs and the other backward classes further adds fuel in the fire. Today, when a student applies for admission and the admission form is filled, the question is always asked, are you an ST, SC or a general caste? What does category matter over here? All that matters is merit. You cannot distinguish a person based on his caste, creed or religion. There are some students who belong to economically backward classes but still belong to the general caste and still can't avail these benefits. While there are those who belong to the reserved category
and do not and avail the seats of those students who work and strive hard to gain the position. And the term reservation is not only reserving seats, but it is also to prosper the vote banks of our ministers. They hinder the growth of our country, isn't it? And today, as we see that many students avail these benefits, it totally hinders our growth. Particularly in the government of India follows that 15% of the students in educational institutions belong to ST, SCs and other backward classes, while the state follows its own policy based on the population. There should be some measures taken over here. Women also need to be empowered over here. There are many times where we see, such as the case recent on the newspapers, that there was a girl from one of the remotest villages in India and who was not given to proceed with her further studies just because she was economically backward. Some solutions that can be taken out by the government are to provide education mandatory up till the age of 15 and education for those women and students who are economically backward. This I hope and believe each one of you have heard me. So today, let's move forward and unite all our brothers and sisters so that we will lead to growth in India. Thank you.
Yes, Stella, I agree with you at some point where the reservation should not be kept in education generally for STs, SCs and OBC. What we consider it should be right and given to the merit basis as well as depending on the quality of the people and how good they are. So I call upon, it was Karen, right? It was Karen. So I call upon next Stella Tom from MES High Secondary School. Our topic for today's will be pros of social media.
A very good morning to the respected members of the jury, teachers and my dear friends. No man can live as an island. Hence, social media was evolved. Man has always been searching for ways and means to communicate with each other and bring the world closer and closer. This is Stella Tom from MES High Secondary School, Zuari Nagar, here before you to express my views on the topic, the perils of social media. Undoubtedly, social media has worked milestones in bringing people across the globe closer and closer, be it exchange of ideas, commodities, e-commerce, etc. It has done it all. The icing on the cake is that, along with these advantages, social media also comes with a whole lot of perils as two sides of the same coin. Social media mainly deals with social networking sites. These social networking sites help us to communicate with each other, be it anyone from our classmate to a childhood friend whom we haven't met since ages. The first ever disadvantage of social media is that the sense of being connected, the false sense of being connected. According to many scientists, it is observed that we feel connected, but we are not. This is because we take into account, give more importance to the various casual relationships that we foster through social media than the meaningful relationships we foster in our real life. Another fearful aspect of social media is that it caters to cyberbullying. Children are most vulnerable to this cyberbullying, in which the predators destroy their lives. The destruction caused can leave deep and dark mental scars. This can sometimes lead to suicides. Also, privacy is another factor that triggers the trust between us and social media. Another fearful factor is authentication is not taken into account when it comes to social media. Certain social media sites do not have safety measures that conceal your privacy. This helps you to get through all the social medias where all your information can be easily leaked. Also, social media can be dreadful, but it is in our hands to see whether we want to use it as an advantage or a disadvantage. As can be stated, it is better safe than sorry. And before I wind up, I would like to quote great Mahatma Gandhi ji, the father of our nation. Be the change that you wish to see in the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Stella. It was nice words. Now, most of us will be all agreeing with what she said regarding how this social media are misused, especially when it comes with long, like you must be hearing about a lot of incidents where kidnapping or misuse of some photos and posted on somebody else's wall. All this are like how deeply it strikes us down, and as you all are teenagers right now, you should be very careful about whom you are including in your friends list on Facebook or on Instagram, where you are uploading every now and then the pictures. So be careful, use the media in a proper, useful manner where you can generally use it like for information, gathering information rather than misusing or spoiling somebody else's future or life. So I call upon next Karan from Chadar Mandir High Secondary, and his topic for the freedom of speech and expression. Sorry, Karan Resource.
Freedom is life's great lie. Once you accept that in your heart, you will know true peace. I quote these words from Loki. He said this in the movie The Avengers. Most of you probably didn't pick up on that quote. You were too busy watching Thor smash things with his hammer. So, are we really free today? Is freedom life's great lie? What kind of freedom do we have? Is there a limit to our freedom? Freedom of speech and expression is a very dicey topic because most people tend to decide what it means for themselves. It's very subjective. But one of the main reference points for most of the international bodies when it comes to deciding about free speech and expression is a work by John Mills. It's called On Justice. In On Justice, he says that a human being should have the right and freedom to offend someone. Are most of us willing to accept this? No, we're not. But he gives us two principles, the offense principle and the harm principle. The harm principle states that if anybody endorses or incites an act of violence or harm against anybody else, it is not acceptable under freedom of speech and expression. But the offense principle states that if I offend you, I'm protected. If what I say hurts your sentiments, it is not a problem. Nobody cares. Freedom of speech is very dicey. Recently there was a video which was made by a comedy group called AIB. It was a roast of many Bollywood celebrities, many popular celebrities. Quite a few people must have heard of it. It was basically a large joke. But the Maharashtra government banned it. They took it down. They said, no, this is not acceptable. This is not right. Amir Khan came out and said, this is not responsible use of freedom of speech. Because he said it's not responsible. Half of our nation said, it's not responsible. This is how we work. But if you look at this, you think that we are very strict. But there's a doctor, Dr. Zakir Naik. For those of you who don't know him, he started out as a doctor, a practitioner doctor, and then he decided to preach Islam, but a radical form of Islam, in which he went against many of our modern practices, and said that it's harmful for Islam. And he said, Osama bin Laden is perfectly fine. If he's terrorizing America, all Muslims should be terrorists. He says transgenders should be put to death. Put to death. That's simple. That's all he said. And we are fine with that because India did nothing against it. But Canada and the UK, which are considered to be the freest places in the world, denied him a visa to enter that land. So, if I crack a joke on a Bollywood celebrity, I'm wrong. What I say is taken down. If I say transgender should be put to death, perfectly fine. What kind of freedom is this? Is this really freedom of expression? Are we really free? I'd like to quote a man on a YouTube channel called Being Indian. He said that freedom of speech is like a buffet. So you walk up to the buffet, and if you don't like the fish, you go, I'm not having any of that. Let's move on, I like dessert. You have a lot of opinions in front of you. You listen or see the food, listen to what people say. Whether you actually are listening and taking it into your head is up to you. If you don't like it, move on. Doesn't mean you're going to go to the table and kick it off. That's how freedom of speech should work in our world. But are we really free to do all this in India? No, we are not. Accept it and move on, because you have to live in the society's norms. As said, freedom is life's great lie. Once you accept that in your heart, you will know truth easily. Thank you.
Thank you, Colin. Freedom is indeed a very dicey topic. He raised a really important topic. Do we really have a choice, or are we just somehow ideologically driven towards choosing one particular thing? Next participant is Nathan from Sharda Mandir High Secondary. His topic is freedom of speech and expression.
So when I went to research the freedom of speech, it's a lot of bad language out there. That's not the freedom to speak, that's just you being crass. Because the freedom of speech is defined as the right of the people to express their opinions publicly without governmental interference. Voltaire once said, and I quote, "I disapprove of what you say, but I will defend to death your right to say." Article 19 of the Constitution of India says that all citizens shall have the right to freedom of speech and expression. Yet we can't say things that affect the integrity of India, the security of India, our relations with other nations. Public decency, morality, security of state. Again, you have the National Security Act in place, you have Prevention of Terrorism Ordinance, Terrorist and Disruptive Activities Prevention Act. Section 124A of the Indian Penal Code deals with sedition or speaking out against the government. And so I ask you, are we free? The only answer you would get from me is this, that everyone has a right to tell their story in their own way. Which brings us back to another question, what kind of society do we live in? If we say that we live in open society, it follows that people will talk about things in their own way, and yes, it will cause offense, it will cause anger. Okay, fine, he said something you don't like, and there are things that I don't like either. That is a matter of fact. That is the price you pay for living in open society. The moment you talk about limiting certain aspects of freedom of speech, you have stepped into a world where freedom no longer reigns. Because you and I now sit and discuss what level of unfreedom we are willing to accept. Because we have accepted the basic principle that we are not free. And so I ask you, what does it mean to be free to speak? No, it's not telling women they can't wear jeans. It's not banning beef. It's not saying pop culture is banned. These political ideals vary depending upon the population in question. The freedom to speak as and when one wishes is tempered with the sort of common sense that many of us find comforting. You will find it hard to find people who did not agree that some forms of speech need not be permitted. The thing is this, in practice, it is very hard for any of us to draw that line. And so while speaking, a careful demarcation is needed. There is a possible overlap between support for ideology and support for action, which is why we need a clear demarcation between the distinction of discussion of ideas and support for action. For example, it is okay for us to go about discussing the merits or demerits of destroying a nation. But when you go about openly supporting a specific form of action, that's no longer free speech. In countries where freedom of speech is relatively far better, the citizens have developed their sort of ideology. In India, we are still unable to find nuance in our dialogue. And so I say this, that freedom of speech is perhaps the most valuable commodity in today's free India. Let's take a case. When you talk about the Maoist rebels, the law here is deliberately ambiguous from the article, and I quote, "Any person who commits the offense of supporting a terrorist organization with intent to further activities will be liable to be punished, jail not exceeding 10 years, a fine or both." If the word had been changed from intent to intention, that's all the difference that is needed. This requires a clear demarcation between legitimate discussion of ideas and support for action, which is clearly missing in the law. The law is also redundant. There was no need for the law. I conclude by saying just this. Freedom to speak has to be conditional. There is no such thing as absolute freedom, because it would be a folly to go about understanding that the freedom to speak is go about just saying what you want. But ask yourself a question. If we are responsible citizens, do we need to go about proving these credentials again and again? The thing is this. The freedom of speech is wonderful. Right up there with your freedom not to listen. Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan. I think with all this talk against banning, we've forgotten to acknowledge one very important advantage of banning books or movies or speaking about something is that the minute you ban it, it becomes so popular that everybody wants to go either watch it or buy it. Yeah, so maybe you want to make your own book popular, put something controversial in it, let it be banned, and then it will probably be sold out the most. Next participant is Rochelle from St. Xavier's High Secondary School. Rochelle's topic is perils of social media. Yes, Rochelle.
यहाँ पे होंगी एक शानदार पेंटिंग ये वाली वाओ यहाँ पर होगा 42 इंच वाला टीवी मस्त दूसरा मिक्सर ग्राइंडर यहाँ पे कड़क बड़क बड़क टोस्टर यहाँ पे बड़ा झूमर बड़ा छोटा झूमर छोटा आई लाइक इट और दिखाओ Honorable Chief Guests, respected members of the jury, faculty members and all the people in the audience, a very good morning. Today I would like to speak to you all on the topic, perils of social media. No man can live as an island. Man requires the company of other humans. And when two human beings meet, they talk, discuss, and in doing so, innovative ideas are shared and then put into practice. In today's fast-paced world, the time spent by people together has lessened. Because social media is filling in for the company of humans. Mass media provides inputs not only of recent happenings, but also the latest products that are endorsed by leading sports stars and film stars. The impact of advertisement is essential. It affects the mind, the heart, and the soul. Once a person sees an ad, it plays upon his mind. The star endorsing the product plays an important role in the consumer's heart. And when the person shops for the product, it affects his mind too. Just as we teach our children how to ride a bike, we have to teach them how to navigate social media. Because children are the ones on whom the impact is the most. They are often hypnotized by the catchy jingles and colorful displays. They report tantrums and drive their parents to movies and demands. Here are such examples. Sylvester Stallone, as a young boy of 7 years, one day wore a Batman suit and jumped out of the window. Why talk about this? But even in India, we've had children jumping off the terrace imitating Shaktiman. This shows the level of impact social media has on children. Social media has also affected adults. We have become very consumeristic. For example, take a recent ad, the Freedom Sale on Amazon. TV programs have become commercial. We have forgotten Take for instance, the ad of Very Lovely. It shows that only 7 days are required for a person to become fair. It shows that on the first day, when the girl wears the actual skin tone, she is discontent about her appearance. And then there she is on the 7th day, glowing and smiling after glowing. This only creates an impression of intolerance and discrimination, depicting that dark-skinned individuals, girls in particular, are not accepted by society, and that they have to become fair to boost their confidence.
Even the mass media, on the one hand, is trying to promote education, where Apple's motherly fiction speaks how ladke rote nahi must be changed to ladke hulate nahi. Yet heinous crimes against women continue. Investigative programs show how crimes have been solved. But in Indian times, they give ideas on how to hide evidence and go scot-free after committing a crime. Social media has affected the way we perceive family life in society. It's spreading tentacles affecting our entire social fabric. We have become egoistic, selfish. We want what is best for ourselves. Branded products. One-stop shop. Shop till you drop. All of us want to reach the highest rung of the ladder without hard work and an easy way out. So it's time we change our lifestyle. Put on a cap. Get beyond the wall of social media. Yahi hai tayari jeet ki. Ding ding ding.
Thank you, Rochelle, for raising the issue of gender stereotypes, and especially how advertisements always try to reinforce it to serve their own purpose.